but it's a cool setup to just prime you with the bass being the lead instrument, the riff being the melody. It's just a cool arrangement style, especially for 1970. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Low End University. N.I.B. is from Black Sabbath's self-titled debut studio album released in 1970, and this album is widely regarded to be the first official heavy metal album to ever be released. But there's a lot of buzz in the air right now surrounding Black Sabbath's final reunion show, taking place about 1 month from the posting of this video. That takes place on July 5th over in Birmingham, England, where it all began. Super special to see Bill Ward coming back on drums. I mean, I wish I could attend something like this, but it sort of dawned on me when I saw this announced that I don't think I've ever seen any footage of Black Sabbath. I feel like all I've seen is Ozzy solo stuff, so this will be really cool for me. I've never really seen GEEZER play, and I'm going to go back to a clip of N.I.B. from 2017, which was their last final show. But of course, I've heard this song before. I always loved the bass intro when I was younger. It's been a really long time since I've heard it. So it'll be good to refresh with a critical listen and actually get to see how GEEZER plays it. So without further ado, here's a live clip from 2017 of N.I.B. from Black Sabbath. Huge crowd, look at that. This was supposedly their final show. I think he's tuned down there. Okay, again, I haven't heard this song in a really long time. Love the wah on it. It almost sounds like Jimi Hendrix just kind of riffing around, but on a bass, which is a cool, expressive thing to use for this bass part. And I just love how square this is. It's really bluesy. It doesn't stay in one place too long. It's going from the main middle octave all up here. And I think he's tuned down in D, like I said, so I might have to tune down. But let me just go back and watch this again. This is interesting seeing his technique. Again, I don't think I've ever really seen any footage of GEEZER playing. Tons of pictures, maybe a few clips, but he's got a real heavy hand, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Let me just watch it again, but better late than never for me. Yeah, he just really strikes through, just kind of slaps down on the strings. Sounds pretty hi-fi with the effects on it. I dig that tone. Mr. GEEZER, come on. Okay, real quick, if I just talk about his technique here, you know, more of a traditional fingerstyle player would use a lot of alternate plucking and just have more of a controlled strike through the strings. Not saying that's me, but that's more of a traditional textbook correct technique. So when I see these older rock legends play in such different, varied ways, all of their techniques visually look different. It goes to show you that technique doesn't freaking matter. If it sounds good, it's comfortable, and you're not being injured while playing, it doesn't matter what you look or sound like, as long as you're happy with your sound, and if other people are too, that's important. But what I'm talking about here is the way he strikes through the strings and sometimes repeats one finger on those faster passages when he could alternate. You know, he could go, but he kind of does this, just using that one finger really fast. And there's an advantage to that you get an evenness and a continuity with each note attack, because no matter how consistent you play with different fingers as a fingerstyle bass player, you're still going to get a bit of a different tone. It's like the difference of alternate picking with a pick or playing downstrokes, just that uniformity. So sometimes I think GEEZER will dig into those lines in a certain way to have that uniformity on a faster passage. I'm going to watch it one more time, and then we'll let the song roll. But that slap attack he gets is really smoothed out by the wah and the effects, so it's a cool blend. Feels feels very Hendrixy in a way to me. Little bits of vibrato he's putting in there. Right there. Just to show you what I was talking about, he kind of strikes really quickly with the same finger when he could alternate, and perhaps it might feel a bit easier, but it has that continuity with all the notes happening right here. Right there. Maybe sometimes even hitting a string with both fingers. Now to the main riff. Cool. Like how they gave it to him here instead of the guitar. Very cool. Kind of like how Ozzy's a little ahead. It just has that lively feel. He's not right on the beat. And, you know, when I did a review on War Pigs a while back here on the channel, I was commenting on that same thing with somebody's pushing, somebody's pulling, and everybody's kind of reining each other in, but it contributes to that rock and roll chemistry that's a little imperfect and has a bit of a swagger to it. Just listen to kind of the tempo of his vocals here. And, you know, it's not offbeat enough to where it sounds bad per se. It sounds live right here. Just a little ahead of the beat. Right there, right here. That's part of his style. Ooh. Tasty bass stuff there. Love how the bass line kind of changes the root note underneath that static part from Tony. So you get some interesting intervals happening there. That kind of sound happening. A little bit of rub there on some of the intervals. Either that or the drummer's really laying back. Just some nice, tasty 5-7-1 kind of arpeggios diatonically. Good stuff. Similar thing here. Slight variation on that same thing I was just talking about, where one layer is staying the same on the notes and somebody else is moving under it. So you get a bit of that. You get some chord inversions happening, some interesting intervals, maybe a bit of tension, a bit of clash, in kind of a cool harmonic way. If you can listen to this section here. Just kind of clustery, right? That's such a blockbuster riff, and I reference Black Sabbath a lot in my videos. I feel like that name comes up a lot out of my mouth, and the main thing I allude to is when I hear a riff that's singable. Like this riff Anybody can sing it. You can hear this riff one time and just sing it back. There's something infectious about that riff writing style, and it's crazy how much they've influenced other bands. And, you know, if I think about the modern metal scene now, riffs are more about technical prowess. And, you know, I don't hear a lot of bands doing that simple singable riff thing. In fact, you know, I just did a full Pennywise album review over on Patreon. I was making the same comment here. You can hear those riffs one or two times and repeat them back. You can sing them back. And it really helps to drive it home that they chose to have a vocal melody that really is in unison. So they're just beating that melody. And in a sense, the whole band is the melody. And the only real variation outside of that melody is the bass intro and some of the bass fills happening. So in a lot of ways, GEEZER is a lead instrument here, deviating from that main riff, doing those bass fills, setting up the song with that really cool bass intro, which I meant to say earlier. I feel like he plays this differently live every time, because even on the studio recording, it sounded very on the edge of his seat, just improvising. So I don't know how much he stuck to it. I remember it being bluesy and kind of free time. So I'd be interested to know if every show when they tour, if this is in the set, if it varies a little each night. I would imagine it does, but it's a cool setup to just prime you with the bass being the lead instrument, the riff being the melody. So just a cool arrangement style, especially for 1970, being on the first heavy metal album to ever be released. That's the claim. I get it. Love these little fills. Another Andalusian cadence, right? Minor 1, major 5, back to the 1. Those are just very loopable progressions. They work so well for guitar solo as well. It just ties it up really nicely. But I'm going to say one thing about his technique too. I was talking about him just really having that heavy-handed, almost kind of like John Entwistle kind of thing. But I don't see him moving his thumb a lot. When you think about playing fingerstyle as a bass player, typically you don't have the luxury of palm muting to keep the strings from ringing out. So normally you do what's called the floating thumb technique. You kind of move your thumb as you ascend higher on the strings, maybe up to the G string. I might put my thumb on the A string or even the D string to ensure that these strings don't ring out. But he really rests it there on the E string, and it never seems to move. So I find that to be interesting. I don't really hear any dirtiness in his playing or any ringing out notes. But again, just to kind of point out that everyone's technique is strikingly different. I find a lot of bass players have a lot of variance in how they choose to mute or attack the strings or mute the strings. So I love these live videos where I can kind of watch and be like, wow, his technique looks so different from the guy I did last week. But he is the godfather of metal bass playing, so he's doing something right, of course. And I just love all the movement under the guitar solo here. It really augments the energy of Tony's solo, for sure. And the solo is just as melodic as the riff. Never too technical. Doesn't lose you. Man, he's digging in. He's so stoic. Another thing I want to point out too is I like how his version of a bass fill, if we're just talking about the tag on the end of that main riff, it's a little different every time. And I've been trying to pick up on the variations, but it's like they all go back to the Then there's like 2 or 3 counts of just kind of whatever. Sometimes he goes. These little tiny fills that don't even sound like fills because they largely mimic the same phrasing of the riff, but that variation gives it an ad-libbed kind of feel, where it's almost like instead of a riff and a fill and a riff and a fill and a riff and a fill, it's like a bunch of different riffs, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, riff variation. So it keeps the song interesting. It keeps the song flowing, having some momentum despite a repetitive riff, and I think a large part of that has to do with what he's doing on the bass there. Love how this bass line keeps it moving too. Oh. 5/6, 5/6, 5/6 here. You can hear the bass so well. It's my favorite part so far. Such a groovy riff. Sometimes too, I swear, Tony and GEEZER's parts together, sometimes when they have these kind of soaring melodic sections that are instrumental, the way they play together almost has like that dual guitar, you know, Metallica, Maiden or whatever, but it's guitar and bass. It's not 2 guitars, it's guitar and bass, but it still has that energy of dual harmonized guitars somehow. Just the harmonies they make, sometimes how GEEZER will jump up high and go into Tony's range. So every now and then they dip into each other's ranges and kind of create that dual guitar effect, despite just being one guitar. I love that. It's just regal and melodic. All this stuff. What was he doing there? Thank you. Gotta love a big rock ending. I love when that happens in these videos. I just can't help myself, have to join in. But no, nonetheless, Geezer Butler is on a list of many other bass players who I've listened to quite a bit, but I've not really seen and see how they play. And I always find my expectation is different when I actually see them. His technique and his tone never sounded as abrasive as it might look based on the way he plays. I find that really cool. I find he had a dirty, kind of warm tone, but it still had some grit on it. And I'm thinking back to maybe why players from that era, like John Entwistle, seem to dig in that way. It almost reminds me of the bass players that came before them playing upright bass, and you just really had to dig in because you were an acoustic instrument. And somehow that translated over to rock and metal, especially when the electric bass came around and started becoming popularized. I wonder if that has something to do with it. And then there's that other side of it where bass players were playing through busted speakers to get that gritty, distorted tone and the history of distortion and such. So they were digging in to get that grittier sound. So I find all this really interesting. That could be a whole other research piece in itself, but it's great to see Sabbath live, despite this being from 2017 at their supposed final show. But their actual final show is coming up July 5th. Anyone going to it? Let me know in the comments. If you are, I'm super jealous. I hope that will be recorded. Just be really great to see that original lineup back for one last time to close the final chapter of the band. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. If you'd like to support this channel further, please come find us over on Patreon. I do full albums over there each month. I have tons of bass lessons, music theory lessons, and such. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I love you all, and we'll see you in the next one.